Hey there, we are on day 2 of the Texas rainstorm. I wanted to take a minute out and help maybe some people understand what they're doing to their body with the foods that they're eating. And the one thing that I want to talk about is carbohydrates, starches, grains, oats, and all of those types of things. I want you to sit down and think about your basic day and what you eat in a basic day. Think about your breakfast, think about your lunch, and think about your dinner. Now, me personally, I do something called intermittent fasting. And what that means is you randomly skip meals throughout the day. And that causes your body to utilize the nutrients, the fat, and so forth that you do have because you've skipped a meal. But think about this. If you have pancakes and eggs, which eggs are great, and bacon for breakfast, believe it or not, the eggs and the bacon is fantastic. And that energy will stay with you most of the day, and that protein will be with you most of the day, and it will help fuel your body and give you energy. But the pancakes, they're not going to do that, especially not the syrup. The butter will, but not the syrup, and not the actual doughy, weedy, planty, grainy pancakes themselves. And then for lunch, you might have yourself maybe a sandwich, maybe a high quality turkey, grass-fed turkey on a whole wheat bread. So now you've had pancakes and whole wheat bread. And for dinner, let's say you have spaghetti and meatballs and you have some garlic bread with that. So now you've had pasta and you've had garlic bread. Okay, so that's all carbohydrates, grains, and that's all going to break down into what? Sugar. Okay, so you just had sugar with every meal, and then you'll probably repeat that again, assuming you don't have potato chips, pretzels, crackers, things like that. Add on top of that, with all that gluten, add on top of that maybe cheese and crackers, cheese on your pasta, a pizza with the crust and the cheese, which is a powerful inflammatory. So now you've got the inflammation from the gluten, from the grains, the inflammation from the dairy, because the body just really doesn't process lactose very well, because we no longer, as adults, once we reach our 20s and past our teens, our body really finds no need to produce lactase, which is what actually breaks down the lactose. And if you think about the whole aspect of what builds up in your muscles to take away your energy and causes muscle cramps and stuff, that's the relationship between lactose and lactase. So basically what I'm getting at is that people are fueling their bodies all day long with the improper fuel. Lack of protein and too much carbohydrate sugars. So if you're fueling your body with sugar all day, your poor kidneys and your poor liver, your spleen, and everything is constantly dealing with the inflammation, constantly dealing with trying to process all of that. And so you keep your body in an inflamed state, which prevents your organs from doing their job. So you get sick. Your immune system gets compromised. I would really like people to really pay closer attention to the amount of starches, carbohydrates, and sugars that you're consuming. And think about how many foods you actually are eating are breaking down into sugars at the end of the day. Another example would be, I'm going to use something I was doing for a while as a great example. Trying to eliminate the sugars from my diet, I started keeping vegetable trays in my house. I thought if I had multiple vegetable trays in the crisper, whenever I felt snacky watching a movie late at night, instead of snacking on chips or something full of carbs and terrible oils, carcinogenic, oxidized oils, I realized carrots are the number one thing. They seem to fill up your vegetable tray with carrots. Carrots are delicious and I love them, and I had been eating quite a bit of them, but I wasn't feeling my best. I felt a little bit of acidosis going on. I felt my body was still getting too much sugar. So I broke it down in my head and I was like, oh my God, carrots are a starch. So are sweet potatoes. We hear so many wonderful things about how good sweet potatoes are for us. Yes, they have wonderful qualities, just like almonds do. But unfortunately, the bulk of what they're doing to your body is bad. So the bulk of what a potato, whatever type of potato it is bad for you. Yes, potatoes have more potassium than 10 bananas, but that potassium isn't going to outweigh the benefits of that potassium. The benefits of the nutrients that come with eating an almond don't outweigh the bad things that it's doing to your body. So, stop, think, reevaluate what you're eating. Try to eat less starches, less carbs, less sugars. Drink more water. Eat more fatty foods. Eat organ meats. Eat lots and lots and lots of vegetables. Green, leafy vegetables. Lots of broccoli. Lots of kale. Now remember, when it comes to broccoli, kale, cauliflower, and these types of things, cooking them is very important. You don't want to overcook them, and it's best not to use an oil. Steaming is the absolute best way to prepare a vegetable like this. And the reason why these particular, not all vegetables, but these particular vegetables should be cooked is because they're highly resistant to digestion once they enter your stomach and your intestines. And as I've spoken of in my previous videos, the stomach will give up on something if it finds it too difficult to digest, and then it passes it along into the small intestine. Now the small intestine is kind of like a little ring around your large intestine. We like to think of the small intestine being on top of the large intestine, but in reality it actually circles it. It runs a loop-de-loop around it while the large intestine sits in the middle and then descends down into your aho and then drops out all the food and all the undigested bacterias and fibers throughout the day. You don't poop out meat. If you eat organ meats, your body will digest 100% of all of it. Now, if you have an inflamed digestive system, then that meat could possibly sit in your colon, and that can be dangerous because that will cause fermentation. We don't want fermenting going on in our large intestine. Fermentation needs to go on in the small intestine, which is above and immediately attached to the stomach. That's why I have a problem with juicing and things like that, because basically you're completely devoiding the fiber aspects. You're taking the nutrients, which is good, and the sugars are digesting immediately through your stomach lining and then going into your blood. So we got an 8-minute video. I try to keep them short. And just think about what you've been eating. Think about the amount of sugar, and remember that your fruit juices, your drinks, your sodas, your carbohydrates, your crackers, your pretzels, your pita bread, all of that stuff, wheat, oatmeal. Oatmeal is a very low level of gluten if you get real oatmeal. If you're getting real steel oats that you actually have to cook yourself, not that stuff that comes in a package that you tear off the top and dump it in a bowl and microwave it for a few seconds. That stuff is horrible. That is garbage. It's chemicals layered with gluten, layered with chemicals. Stop killing yourself with all the wheat, all the gluten, all the barley, all the inflammatory foods. And if you notice, I haven't told you really and truly not to eat certain things. I'm only telling you not to eat the sugary foods and the things that convert over to sugars, or at least curb them. What I'd love for you to do is to completely eliminate these things from your diet for just 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then see how you feel. Watch the inflammation drop. Eat more fatty foods like avocados and things like that. Eat fatty meat. Liver is so good for us. One bite of liver will nutrify you for a whole week. One bite. 10 pounds of vegetables can't even come close to that. That's why our hunter-gatherer ancestors, the American Indian, that's why all of these people were so healthy. They'd go on a hunt, they'd kill some big beast, they'd cut its stomach open, they'd take out all the organ meats, and they would leave the muscle meats. They never ate the muscle meats. They left that one buffalo in the pasture for all the predators to be able to consume the muscle meats. They looked at the organ meats as treasure. And they would take those organ meats back to the village, take those organ meats back to the tribe. And that one handful of liver from that one buffalo, that big, huge chunk of liver, would be cut up into little teeny pieces. And that one liver would provide the amino acids, the proteins, and the minerals for that entire tribe. Because they would use 10 pounds of vegetables and fruits that they'd gathered, nuts and seeds, and they would cut up that liver and spread it out and cook 10 pounds of vegetables with one little teeny piece of liver that is cut up. You can turn it into a liquid, you could chop it up into tiny pieces, but they would introduce those organ meats to their meals to get all the nutrients that they needed. Now, of course, back then, the soils had the proper bacterias, and the soils had much more minerals in them. So they really had a balanced diet. And then to top it off, the American Indian had to hunt and gather their food. Instead of wiping these amazing people out off of the planet, we should have spent more time learning their food habits. Instead, like the complete morons the pioneers were, we took certain things from their dietary habits, like their corn and their other foods, and all we did was focus on that. And eventually we started feeding ourselves inflammatory, horrible foods like corn and wheat and so forth. But all of those things were just a tiny little part of a well-balanced diet. And the one thing the thin, muscular American Indian did not have in their diet was sugar. And the only forms of sugar they did have came from fruit, mostly berries, which are the healthiest fruits to eat. If you only ate one type of fruit, it should be a type of berry. Now remember though, anything with a stem, and this is important for those of you that suffer from candida, anything with a stem has a high mold fungal content. I want you to think about that. Because of the stem and the way the stem goes into the fruit and has that little tunnel where the stem goes, mold and bacteria and funguses grow in there. And how many of you spend extra effort cleaning that area with a toothbrush? Nobody. So when you're washing your fruit with regular water, you're actually causing that area in there to leach out that mold and fungus. So when you eat your apple with a stem, when you eat your pear with your stem, when you eat your cherries, which are one of the most powerful anti-inflammatories on the planet, and when you eat your grapes, which are the worst of all, and when you eat your blueberries, that's right, one of the healthiest foods on the planet is a blueberry. But if you don't clean your blueberries properly with a scrub brush and get that mold off of there, all you're doing is serving to give your candida the spores and the steroids that it needs to reproduce like gangbusters. All right, this is your friend Sinatra Kennedy. Healthy mind, healthy body. Remember, most important of all, it starts with a positive outlook on your day. Be happy, think happy thoughts, focus on the positive, avoid spending time around the pessimists in your life, those people that are spreading negative energy. Man, you cannot be an eagle if you're hanging out with the chickens all the time. You must soar into the sky with the eagles and hawks, my friends. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're socializing with positive, like-minded individuals. Don't give up on the negative people in your life, but don't allow them to spread their negativity into your life, because negative energy is extremely contagious. It is so easy to be miserable and complain and blame everything on something else in your life instead of grabbing your horse by the reins, taking control, and becoming what you wish to be and living the dreams you have. Thanks for watching. And you know I love all of you. I do. And that's why I love answering your questions, and that's why I jump on them. Have a good day. Time for some music.